I am in no way claiming to be a portfolio expert because I have some complicated feelings about my portfolio. Hey there, thanks for stopping by. My name is Glory and I'm a third year architecture student studying at the Bartlett School of Architecture UCL. It sounds so weird to say that because in my previous portfolio video I was still a second year and all of a sudden I'm a third year now. Anyways, this video was suggested by one of my subscribers from my previous portfolio video. Thank you so much for the lovely messages you guys have left on that video. I'm so glad it was helpful to a handful of you, and I hope this video will be helpful too. And if you haven't seen my previous portfolio video, which I talk about my accepted Bartlett portfolio, please click here, or is it there? I don't know, I'll put a link there. So go check it out if you're interested. Again, I need to put a disclaimer and reiterate that I am in no way claiming to be a portfolio expert, nor did any architecture school set the things I'm about to say in this video explicitly to me. These are just things I kind of picked up along the way as I was applying and had my time in Bartlett and architecture school and just throughout my art, design, architecture journey, so hopefully you'll find these tips useful too. So in this video, first I will go through some tips for general portfolios first in general, and then I will do a separate tips section for physical portfolio and then a digital portfolio, depending on which schools you're applying to. Especially since some schools do require a physical portfolio, such as the Bartlett, where you have to show your original work at the interview. So first of all, we have some general tips. So number one, you want to focus on projects that have a very rich backbone, which means there's a lot of research and thought that went into the whole process of creating this work and design, because these are the projects that gives the tutors and the admissions tutor, interviewer, an insight to who you are and how you work. Number two, think about why you want to put this piece of work in your portfolio. What exactly are you trying to communicate through this piece of work to the interviewer or the admissions tutor? It should tell the person something about how you are as a person and how you work, similar to my previous point that I just mentioned. It shouldn't just be like, oh, this piece looks really nice, it looks really cool, or it makes it seem like I've got a lot of skills. Obviously, you want to demonstrate that you have skills, but it should be a little bit deeper than that and really tell people how you are as a person rather than just very surface level of, I'm a good art student. So what? Number three, you want to present your work to other people. I really need to emphasize this tip because I feel like I haven't done this tip enough. Don't be scared to show your portfolio to other people because it's your chance to get feedback from other people. Ask your art teachers, your art friends, art classmates, even ask your family and friends who might not be interested in art or have no art background and see how good you are at explaining your work to an audience who might have no knowledge of anything design related. And it just gives you a chance to practice your communication skills, which you will ultimately need. If you go into architecture school, you need to be very good at communicating your ideas and the thought process behind each piece of work. So this will be a really good practice, and honestly, I really should do this more often. So now let's get into the physical portfolio section, which is kind of what I did for Bartlett and for Cambridge. So obviously with a physical portfolio, you're going to need to, I assume, to bring your original work to an interview. So that's just what physical portfolio means. Some people actually bind it all together as a book, but because for Bartlett, they do require the original work. So creating it into like a nicely packaged book didn't really make sense to me. So obviously, I brought all of my work over to the interview. So tip number one is go through all of your best works first. So this tip might seem a bit weird because I know a lot of people say put your best work towards the end, but specifically for Bartlett, I would say put all of your best works to the front, please. Because it's highly likely that you're gonna run out of time when you do the interview with your interviewer, which is what happened with me when I did my interview. Especially because if you're gonna start having a discussion with your interviewer about all of your pieces of work, you really wanna go through your best work first to catch your interviewer's eyes right at the very beginning and give time, for a good discussion. Because what happened with me when I did my Bartlett interview is that I didn't really have enough time to go through some of my strongest work towards the end, but luckily some of my previous work was quite strong too, so we had a really good discussion on one of those pieces, and it didn't really matter that I didn't have time to discuss that. But if I were to do it again, I would definitely put the strongest pieces of work to the front, so we could have a much more meaningful discussion way earlier compared to just going through like random pieces of work that might not spark an as interesting conversation as some of your more interesting works. Number 2, rehearse what you are going to say for each piece of work. So obviously you're going to have to present all of your work at the interview, so you really don't want to stutter when you present each piece of work. And it means that you're also wasting a lot of precious time to have good discussions with the interviewer about your work. Therefore, I highly recommend you to just rehearse what exactly you're going to say for each piece before you go to the interview, just so you can present your work in a much more clearer manner. And this also goes back to one of my previous points saying to practice a lot with the people around you. Number 3, think about the access. So once you figure out the sequence of which work should go first, and then after that, and then the whole order of it, keep in mind that, some of the work that you put towards the end might not even make it into the interview. You might not get to discuss with them, which is what happened to me. You want to think about the scale of each work and how you're going to present them and show them to the interviewer, especially if you have very large scales of work or you have a lot of 3D work. So you really need to think about how you're going to bring them to the interview as well, which is a problem that I face because I had a lot of 3D works and some of them were really massive. They were like half the size of me. So I struggled to take them, and ultimately in the end I had to really sacrifice not bringing some of the work to the interview because they were just too big. And I guess that's kind of some of the risks and sacrifices you have to make when they require a physical portfolio. I could only bring photographs over, so keep that in mind. Also think about how you're going to bring them, like a portfolio case, or are you going to bring a suitcase, or binders. Just really think it through, like play it over in your head before you actually go to the interview, and this prevents you kind of last minute panicking before that and realizing you don't have enough binders or cases to actually carry all of your work to the interview. So if you think this through and practice what you're gonna say, it just makes the whole process a lot smoother, and you don't have to worry about the logistics of the interview on the day, and you can spend more time thinking about how you're gonna present them. So now let's move on to the digital portfolio section. So obviously for the Bartlett people, I'm not sure how the admissions process is now. I'm not sure if there's going to be a digital portfolio section since obviously travel restrictions are in place. But I think the digital portfolio, this section, is also applicable to people who are applying to other different UK Archi unis, or even in the US, or I guess other courses that require a digital portfolio. So I hope this will also be helpful. Number 1, which is a little bit different to a physical portfolio, I would say, is put your best works first and last of a digital portfolio. Usually, digital portfolios, they give you some restrictions, like you can only have X amount of pages, X amount of photographs, and different formats that you have to follow. So for the order of a digital portfolio, I recommend putting your second best work at the very first, so it leaves a good impression on the admissions tutor and it keeps them engaged and interested to look through the rest of your portfolio. And then you want to finish your portfolio off with a bang with your best work at the very end of your portfolio, so it leaves a good impression on them, and that's going to be the most memorable piece of you that the admissions tutor is going to remember. So that's how it lay out the whole order. Also keep in mind that the standard of your portfolio is going to be dependent on the quality of your least favorite, or quote unquote worst piece of work. So keep in mind the quality that you want to have with your entire portfolio. So really think it through what the order is. And obviously I can't tell you which piece of your work is the best. You will have to decide, and I think you probably know somewhere inside which piece is best and which piece is, I guess, the worst. But I don't think any piece is the worst, but skill set wise, I think the quality, you can show it. But I would say that the one that has the most research and quality time spent on it and a lot of thought process behind would definitely be my choice of quote unquote best piece of work. But obviously the quality of the work, like skill set wise, needs to be really good too. Number 2, don't describe, explain the thought process. So I emphasized this a lot in my previous architecture portfolio related video, but the admissions tutor and interviewers are not stupid. So they can see your work with their own eyes. So you don't really need to go through the hassle of explaining how you exactly did your piece of work description wise, like saying I did this and then I did that and then I did that. They're not really interested in hearing that. Rather focus on your thought process behind the piece of work and the idea behind it and what drove you to create this piece of work. And usually I think that's kind of the most interesting part of the work itself too, when I have a conversation with some of my architecture friends. So yeah. Number 3, layout. The layout of your portfolio, I think, do matter to some extent because you are technically applying to a creative course after all. So the packaging of your work is an evaluation of your skill set in some way, to be honest. Think about which photographs and which pieces have more importance compared to the other ones, and you might want to enlarge them. Then you want to keep the ones that might not have as much significance towards the side of the larger piece. So the person who's looking at your portfolio knows where to look instead of just, a whole range of similar sizes photographs and it's very scattered and you don't exactly know where you're supposed to put your eyes and vision at. So it could get a little bit messy. Also, I want to say keep the style of your portfolio quite cohesive so people won't be confused about the sudden change of layout or sudden change of style. So those are my top tips for creating a top tier, I guess, a good architecture portfolio for university applications. I hope these tips are really useful. Again, if you want to see the portfolio that I got accepted into Bartlett with, please go check my previous architecture portfolio related video. I hope this is really interesting for you, especially because I know that regarding my portfolio, it's everyone's different, so you really need to find your own sense of style and the way that you want to lay your work out. Other people's work can only be a point of reference, so I hope that these tips are more pinpoint and more useful in the sense that it can be applicable to your own portfolio. So let me know if you have any more questions in the comments down below, and I'm always really happy to help. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I really appreciate it. And see you in the next one. Bye!